So Claire's rerun is out now. And of course the big question is, should you get her? I have no idea. If you like her, get her. If you don't like Claire, don't bother getting her. If you're kind of on the fence about getting Claire, maybe you kind of like her, but Fontaine is on the way, or maybe you just want a pyro on-field mage, well, this is the video for you. Because I would say, better call Yanfei.
天気のいいうちに条文でも暗記するか。リーウェ商店第27章第6条第1項は何だったか。この私が忘れるなんて。いかん。しっかりしないと。
We're here with Yanfei and Masanori. Let's do this. There's 3 teams I want to show off that you can do with Yanfei, and I'm pretty sure you can do these teams with Claire as well. This is sort of like a melt vaporized team where Yanfei is just popping off. We have C6 Diona, we have Kaz, we have Yalan, so there's also a lot of EM and damage percent coming in as well. In a similar vein, we have potentially a bit of an unusual team. I don't really see a lot of people play this particular team with Yanfei, but we're playing Burgeon Yanfei. So, you know, bit unusual, but let's do this. Kind of ends up being a burn forward vape team as well sometimes. With some board vaping if it crits. Something like that. Basically, you do have Baiju as a healer. You could potentially bring someone like Nahida as well, but then you kind of don't really have a healer unless you decide to use Jean. Now, I did run into a bit of an energy issue with Yanfei, so there is of course one other character that can really help fix that. And so I offer Overvape with A. A is of course a really good battery. And so you could use her as a way of battering someone like Yanfei. We're basically going to try and get Yanfei's ult back through the power of A. And just like that, we nearly got all of Yanfei's ult back. And on top of that, we're also able to do some overvapes with Yanfei. So my understanding about Claire and Yanfei is that they have rather similar playstyles. We're basically looking at 2 on-fielders who are of course mages as well. They tend to use a lot of charge attacks in their general gameplay. They're rather energy hungry as well, and they tend to really start popping off only after using their ults. You can use Claire and Yanfei's normal attacks and charge attacks before they have their ults active, but I think you'll find that their damage really kicks up when they have their ults active, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on. There might be a difference in pyro application. I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm sure there's going to be a Claire main somewhere who's going to pop up and be like, yeah, there's actually a bit of a difference. But the big difference, I think, between Claire and Yanfei is that Claire's charge attacks can stagger, and they can stagger pretty hard. Because there are enemies such as Geovishaps that can basically get permastunned by Claire. So that is something that makes her pretty good. Now let's just quickly go through Yanfei's build and just basically what you can use for Yanfei. In terms of weapons, pretty much every single 5-star DPS weapon works on Yanfei. I think Tuletala's Remembrance might be her best slot. If that's not the case, then Lost Prayers, because Tuletala's being a 66% crit damage stat stick on top of that, after you use your skill, you get a lot of normal attack damage and normal attack speed, which is something that Yanfei tends to use quite a lot. It does end up cancelling when you use a skill again, so you do have about 9 seconds, but as you could see in my demonstrations, usually when you use Yanfei's skill, you go through about 2 rounds of normal attacks and charge attacks before you kind of get around to using your skill, or maybe it's like 3 rounds. But if that's not the case, if Tulitalis is not necessarily her best in slot, then Lost Prayers is really, really good for her. Outside of that, you could potentially use something like Kagura's Verity. You can actually maintain Kagura's Verity stacks pretty easily because Yanfei's skill is 9 seconds, whereas Kagura's skills stacks last for 16 seconds, and I believe they don't just disappear independently, so that makes them really, really good. But considering that the majority of Yanfei's damage does seem to come from charge attacks, I don't think Kagura's is going to be as strong. In terms of the 4-star weapons, every single DPS 4-star weapon works on Yanfei. As far as I can tell, the Wit Sith is probably your best choice because the Wit Sith is just ludicrously strong. I haven't seen anyone use sack frags on Yanfei, but it could be an interesting and somewhat hilarious way of dealing with Yanfei's potential energy problems by just being able to use her skill, do a charge attack, then use her skill again, and then do a charge attack. Because, keep in mind, when you use Yanfei's skill, you get your maximum seals, and the seals is the mechanic that is going to affect the charge attack damage that Yanfei does. Outside of that, there's always Dodoko Tails, which is an event weapon, so if you don't have that, then you don't have that. In terms of artifacts, it's a real toss-up between 4-piece Wanderers or 4-piece Crimson. I've seen some debate back in the day as to which one is better for her. I think at this point, it really just comes down to which one you have better substats for. You could potentially do 2-piece Crimson, 2-piece EM. You could potentially do 2-piece Crimson, 2-piece Attack as well. But generally speaking, if you can get 4-piece Wanderers or 4-piece Crimson, I think you're on the right track. You could also try 4-piece Gilded. That one, of course, being a newer set. I haven't seen a whole lot of discussion about that one, but it should still be really, really good for someone like Yanfei. There's also allegedly a 4-piece set that is coming in Fontaine. And just by reading that particular artifact set, I think that might actually be Yanfei's best in slot. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to farm for her. You might want to hold off until 4.0 drops. In terms of building those artifacts, it's basically going to be attack damage crit or EM damage crit. If you're using something like Sack Frags or Wit Sith, I'd probably stick to attack damage crit. Like, it really just depends on like your team, whether or not you run EM or attack. Obviously, if you're running someone like Benjamin, then you should definitely go EM damage crit. If you're running someone like Sucrose or Nahida, then I reckon you should just stick to attack damage crit. And finally, we have Yanfei's Constellations. All of Yanfei's Constellations are pretty good. We have C6 Yanfei. So, I'm just going to go through all of these constellations one by one. C1 Yanfei, the idea is that the more Scarlet Seals you have, which in turn increases the amount of damage that your charge attack does, the less stamina your charge attack has. Keep this in mind when we get to C6. C2, your charge attack crit rate is increased by 20% against enemies that have less than half health. Unlike Eula's C4, which is hilariously more or less unusable outside of particularly tanky bosses, Yanfei's C2 is usable because Yanfei's charge attacks are not going to do so much damage that you're guaranteed to basically insta-kill an enemy. Instead, you can actually guarantee more crit charge attacks. And that's going to be somewhat important as well because Yanfei has a talent that I actually forgot existed. And I believe it is called Blazing Eye. When Yanfei's charge attack deals a critical hit, she will gain another instance of pyro damage that is 80% of her attack. So you get another hit that is on top of Yanfei's charge attack when it crits. So when you have something like C2 and a build like mine that has 80% crit rate, guaranteed crits basically also include a bit of additional damage. Keep in mind though, 80% of her attack as opposed to the talent scaling of 200 and something, so it's not going to be a huge hit. C3 is talent levels. C4 is the shield. A lot of players tend to use Yanfei in their Hu Tao team, and they play around the shield. That's called building Tank Fei. So Tank Fei is pretty good because it's 45% of her max HP, which I believe is even bigger than how Zhongli's shield works. Either way, if you decide to build Tank Fei, you get a very tanky shield. Good on you. Me personally, I'm still continue to play DPS Yanfei, and even on my build, I only have like, what, 14k health? That's around about a 6k shield. So that's really, really good. C5 is talent levels, and then C6, you increase the maximum amount of Scarlet Seals by 1. This retroactively makes C1 really, really good, because when you have your 4 Scarlet Seals, your charge attack uses no stamina, basically. So that's like really, really good. And then on top of that, when you have your 4 Scarlet Seals, you go from a maximum of 233% talent scaling to 260% talent scaling at level 9. So that is an additional amount of damage that is also going to be very, very useful. That's pretty much it for Yanfei. She is really, really good. She is basically like your straightforward pyro carry character who's on field, and she can do quite a lot of damage. In the right circumstances, I have hit 100k charge attacks, so just keep that in mind. And these are charge attacks with Yanfei, where I'm just hitting them really, really quickly in succession. So that's something that you can do with Yanfei as well. I did end up using Benny, I think, for that kind of setup. Point is, Yanfei is really, really strong. In a similar capacity, Claire is also really, really strong. So if you're kind of on the fence about getting Claire, give Yanfei a try. See how she goes. If you like playing Yanfei, then you like playing Yanfei. Awesome. I personally don't really want to bother trying to get Claire anymore. I did kind of try to get Claire in 2.8. Lost the 50-50. Got Kaz instead. Tried again. Lost another 50-50. Saved that guarantee for Tenari. So at this point, I'm kind of done trying to get Claire. But if you decide that you want to get Claire anyway, go ahead. Good luck, have fun. She's got a new outfit, so that's definitely another reason to consider getting Claire. But aside from that, let me know what all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about Yanfei and also by extension Claire? Let me know in the comments. Also, you may have noticed I keep calling her Claire. There is like 3 different ways to pronounce her name. You could go with the in-game version of Klee, you could go with the alleged German version of Klee, or you could go with what I've decided, which is Claire, because I think that sounds like a more Romanized version of her name, and also in Japanese her name is Kure. So that basically kind of sounds like Claire to me. So I'm gonna go with that. If her name really was Klee, then I would have thought that her Japanese name would be Klee. Anyway, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact content, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
いい